Hello everyone, this is Michael again. Today we are going to continue our talk about reading subtest. Just a quick reminder of its format. It consists of 3 parts, part A, part B and part C. They are all to be answered in 60 minutes. There is 2 papers. The first paper consists of part A only. It's to be answered in 15 minutes, while the second paper has part B and part C combined. Part A consists of 20 questions and 4 short texts. Part B has 6 questions and 6 short texts. Part C has 16 questions and 2 longer texts. The questions of Part A are matching or gap filling or short answers, while in Part B and Part C they are multiple choice questions. Okay, Part B, 6 short texts, 6 MCQ questions. That's 1 MCQ question for each short text. All the 6 short texts are between 100 and 150 words. All the texts are sourced from the healthcare workplace. They are either updates, memos, guidelines, policies, or emails. What this part tests is your ability to understand the gist, purpose, main point, or detail in the given texts. So in this part you'll have to read carefully, not just skim and scan like in part A. And the time given is enough, but you'll have to organize your time in the second paper, as we mentioned before, as a whole paper, which I mean part B and C combined is to be answered in 45 minutes. But you'll have to answer part B in about 15 minutes. So that's about 2 to 2.5 minutes for each text and question. So again, time management is very important. Let's see what it looks like. First, there will be the MCQ question itself with 3 answer options. Then underneath will be the short text. The 3 options, of course, one of them is the correct answer with the correct info that's found in the text. The 2 wrong options will be either something that is opposite to what is written in the text or an info that's not present in the text itself. Let's take an example together. This is an example of one of the samples that's found on the official website, and that's what the questions in the exam will be like. Now, what to do when you're taking the test? There's 2 scenarios. So you either read the question with the options first, then you go to the text, and the other option is that you read the text first, then you go back to the question and the options. And that's exactly what I want you to do. So you read the text quickly but carefully, then you go back to the questions. Most people find this is much better than the first option. It depends from one person to another, but in about more than 95% of people, they will prefer the second one. It will consume less time and less effort. So let's answer this one together. As I said, we'll start by reading the text itself. It talks about instruction manual digital automatic blood pressure monitor. Electromagnetic compatibility (EMC). With the increased use of portable electronic devices, medical equipment may be susceptible to electromagnetic interference. This may result in incorrect operation of the medical device and create a potentially unsafe situation. In order to regulate the requirements for EMC with the aim of preventing unsafe product situation, the blah 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 standard defines the levels of immunity to electromagnetic interference as well as maximum levels of electromagnetic emissions for medical devices. This medical device conforms to blah blah for both immunity and emissions. Nevertheless, care should be taken to avoid the use of the monitor within 7 meters of cell phones or other devices generating strong electrical or electromagnetic fields. So now we get back to the question. It says the manual informs us that the blood pressure monitor. The options are is likely to interfere with the operation of the other medical equipment. The second option is may not work correctly in close proximity to some other devices or should be considered safe to use in all hospital environments. So you'll first have to identify the options that's not given at all in the text, which is here the C option. Now, for the first two options, one of them is correct, the other is opposite to what is written. So, both of them are talking about interference between the blood pressure monitor and other devices. But which of them is correct? Okay, let's read here. The last three lines. Starting from needless care should be taken to avoid the use of monitor within 7 meters of cell phones or other devices generating strong electromagnetic fields. So, the blood pressure monitor gets affected, not affecting the other devices. So the correct answer will be, let's see, it is not the first. It's written here. It's likely to interfere with operation of other medical equipment. That is the opposite. So it will be B. May not work correctly in close proximity to some other devices. That's exactly what is written in the text. Same meaning, just different words. Alright, let's take the next one. And again, we will start by reading the text quickly but carefully. It talks about nasogastric feeding tubes. Displacement of nasogastric feeding tubes can have serious implications if undetected. Incorrectly positioned tubes leave patients vulnerable to the risks of regurgitation and respiratory aspiration. It is crucial to differentiate between gastric and respiratory placement on initial insertion to prevent potentially fatal pulmonary complications. Insertion and care of a nasogastric tube should therefore only be carried out by a registered doctor or nurse who has undergone theoretical and practical training and is deemed competent or is supervised by someone competent. Assistant practitioners and other unregistered staff must never insert nasogastric tube or be involved in the initial confirmation of safe nasogastric tube position. Alright, now we read the question. It says the notice is given information about, and we have three options here. The first says ways of checking that a nasogastric tube has been placed correctly. As you can see, a similar meaning of checking that a nasogastric tube has been placed correctly was mentioned in the text. As we can see here, it's crucial to differentiate between the gastric and respiratory placement on initial insertion, and in the last line, initial confirmation of nasogastric tube position. But nothing was mentioned about the ways of checking, so there's no information about this one here, so this is a wrong one. Next one is how the use of nasogastric feeding tubes is authorized. This one is actually tricky. You may think that they're talking about who's authorized to use them, but actually it is written how the use of nasogastric feeding tubes is authorized, how the mechanism of authorization, like the conditions it 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 should be authorized in, and this is not mentioned here in the text, so this one also is incorrect. The third one says which stuff should perform nasogastric tube placement. This is obviously what the paragraph was talking about. From here, only be carried by a registered doctor or nurse who has undergone theoretical and practical training and is deemed competent, or is supervised by someone competent, and who is not to be authorized, like assistant practitioners and other unregistered staff must never insert nasogastric tube or be involved in the initial confirmation of safe nasogastric tube position. So all this is talking about which staff should perform nasogastric tube placement, so this is the right answer. The next text has a headline saying right patient, right blood assessments. The administration of blood can have significant morbidity and mortality. Following the introduction of the right patient, right blood safety policy, so you're talking about safety policy here, all the staff involved in the transfusion process must be competency assessed to ensure the safe administration of blood components to the intended patient. All staff must be aware of their responsibilities in line with professional standards. Staff must ensure that if they take any part in the transfusion process, their competency assessment is updated every 3 years. All staff are responsible for ensuring that they attend the mandatory training identified for their roles. Relevant training courses are clearly identified in Appendix 1 of the mandatory training matrix. The question here is, what must all staff involved in the transfusion process do? The options are A. Check that their existing training is still valid. B. Attend a course to learn about new procedures. Or C. Read a document that explains changes in policy. Well, obviously we can see that there is nothing mentioned about any documents here, so we can exclude C. Now we can see the importance of understanding the whole thing, the gist or the main point of the whole text. As we can see here, the question contains the word all staff. So, as we can understand from the text, that the right answer is to be that they have to check their existing training is still valid. As we can see here, in all staff involved in the transfusion process must be competency assessed. it's not mentioned that all the staff must attend the course to learn about new procedures. Actually, what you understand from the text, if they're already competent enough, they don't have to attend a course. Okay, so not all of them must attend a course. So this is not the right answer here. A is the right answer. Alright, next text. Yes, extract from Chaperone's guidelines for good practice. It's important to know that chaperone is a person who acts as the witness between the patient and the medical practitioner during examination or procedure, medical examination. Well, a patient may specifically request a chaperone or in certain circumstances may nominate one, but it will not always be the case that chaperone is required. It's often a question of using professional judgment to assess the individual situation. If a chaperone is offered and declined, this must be clearly documented in patient's record, along with any relevant discussion. The chaperone should only be present for the physical examination and should be in a position to see what the healthcare professional undertaking the examination or investigation is doing. The healthcare professional should wait until the chaperone has left the room or cubicle before discussion take place or on any aspect of the patient's care, unless the patient specifically requests the chaperone to remain. So, the question here is, the guidelines establish that the healthcare professional should, and we should complete the sentence with one of these three options. First is aim to make the patient fully aware of their right to a chaperone. Second option is evaluate the need for a chaperone on a case-by-case basis. Third option is respect the wishes of patients above all else. Okay, the first option is not mentioned here in the text. The patient may already know the right to a chaperone or not, but there is nothing here about explaining or fully explaining for the patient about the chaperone situation. B evaluates the need of a chaperone on a case-by-case basis. Oh yeah, this is likely. Let's exclude the third one first. It says respect the wishes of the patient above all else. This is not the case here because the text mentions that it will not always be the case that the chaperone is required. So it's neither A or C. It's neither A nor C, so let's make sure that this is the right one, B. We can see here it's often a question of using professional judgment to assess an individual situation. So this gives the same meaning as option B here, which is to evaluate the need for a chaperone on a case-by-case basis. So this is the right answer. Alright, these were some examples. You guys need to practice answering more sample tests. And always remember, the more you practice, the easier it gets. And as we said, start with reading the texts and reading questions and answer options. And then you may need to reread the text if necessary to eliminate or confirm an option. Try to finish each question in less than 2 minutes. So read quickly but carefully and stay focused during your test.